So here's the situation. I was just in Australia. I was there for 2 months. I basically did a model placement. It's essentially you sign a contract, you go somewhere, you live there for 2 to 3 months, and you work there as a model. And all that was organized by my lovely Australian agency. And just a few weeks ago, I paid a visit to said agency. I think they had called me for a random, I think I had to send like a casting video or something, but it was super last minute, so I didn't have time to change before I went to the agency. And at home, I was right in the middle of painting, so I was wearing my paint pants, and they're not the most professional looking pants, so I normally avoid wearing them to castings or jobs or things like that. But actually my agents complimented them, and they realized, they were like, oh, so you're an artist. It actually ended up being a very sweet and supportive interaction. I showed them all my art, and then they asked me, they were like, oh, well, we need more art for the office. Would you want to do painting for our office? To which I responded, well, absolutely, I would love to. Please and thank you. So this is basically that. So my first big chunk of inspiration actually came from this live model illustration class I was taking in Sydney. Not only did it reignite my love for drawing bodies and anatomy, but I also really got inspired by the gallery itself. It's owned by this legend. He's an artist, and he mainly works with watercolor and ink. He incorporates a lot of like these bluish, tealish next to oranges. Those are complementary colors, so they look fantastic next to each other. But it's also very reminiscent of the coastal color palettes that you see in Australia, which brings me to my next inspiration. The beach. I love the colors here, and I wanted to incorporate something that I discovered in a gallery in Japan. They did an exhibition showcasing a collection by designer Issey Miyake, where all the colors of the fabrics from one collection came from colors that were found in Italy. So the yellows came from Sicilian lemons, the greens came from various plants, and like this teal, it came from the moss of a tree in Florence. I don't know, I felt really drawn to this method because I love the idea of drawing materials and colors from painting from tangible objects, especially now in these times with AI. Art and music is really struggling, and in most cases I feel like artists and musicians are just kind of going back to the old ways in order to counter its effects. Like with musicians, like for example, not looping any elements in a song, making sure that every part of it is sung or played. And although I think these things are great, I feel like if all we're doing is going backwards, then we're just stopping ourselves from truly innovating. And I'm not saying at all by this method that I found a way to stop AI from decimating art, but it does feel like a good step in that direction of still adapting ourselves to this new age of technology and trying to find creative ways to practice art while still keeping its human quality. Just like here in this piece, robots could never go to the beach, smell the salty breeze, hear the waves crashing in the background as you let your mind get drawn to the explosion of colors in the coastal rocks. And that's what makes our voices differ. For example, with this sand, you just take a little bit of all the primary colors on a palette, and then you mix them gradually until the color match is perfect. It takes a lot of practice though, so beware. And also sand was really difficult because it's like 1,000 different little pieces of 1,000 different colors, so it's harder to match than it looks, but I think I got it close enough. I did have a bit more luck with the other colors. I managed to get this deep violet, and then I got this grayish purplish mauve, this orange, which I don't know where that's from. I don't know if that's a mushroom or, and this teal that looks like moss, but it is not. Now time for the first sketch. Make sure you pay very close attention to this sketch because we're actually going to forget about it completely and throw it in the trash. It is one of the worst things I've ever created. I just wanted to show you this sunset. For my actual sketches, I like to do multiple at once because this is a more abstract painting, so I like to test out a lot of different compositions and colorways and things like that. I knew I wanted the teal background, so I started with that, and then I just experimented. Some turned out better than others, some turned out not good at all, but it doesn't really matter. I did love this ombre thing. I really tried to make this like skirt thing work. It was not working. And also hate the black outline, but love the ombre. And for the figures, I am using reference pictures I took. Don't look at them too closely though, because it's kind of embarrassing. Reference pictures are always so humbling. I'm using pretty generic canvas board and a Prismacolor pencil in purple, because I like purple, and sketching it on. Okay, so I'm finally done with the sketch for under the painting. I was struggling, oh my god, but we got there in the end. I guess maybe I should have warmed up before doing the sketch, but I guess I forgot how to draw, and I got the position wrong, so I had to like trace this over and move it 1 centimeter. I don't even want to talk about it anymore. And now I'm getting out the paints. I'm using gouache for this. I don't even know what kind of gouache it was. It's these random paints I got in the shop in Japan. They were way too overpriced, but the selling lady was so cute. I couldn't resist. The first layer of paint doesn't really matter. It's mostly to block out the shapes. So I'm also using this big fat brush that I'll show you. Using a wide brush basically keeps you from going into details from the get-go. It forces you to focus on big shapes, which is very good. Honestly, the next few minutes of this painting process, I think I will fail at giving explanations to what I'm doing, because there is no method to this madness. In the beginning, I was actually very set on doing the left character a purple to sand color ombre, the middle one this kind of like muted beige, and the right one that rusted orange. But it's all gonna change because it just looks like shite. Upon realizing that it looks like crap, I did try to darken that middle character with, I'm going most of the time with very watered down washes of gouache. Like in the middle, I'm doing deep violet wash, and then I introduced this pink color, which I don't know where that came from. I'm gonna cover it up later with greener washes to kind of neutralize it. But I did start working on the faces. I was doing like very light and soft renderings of facial features without like making anything too precise, and I felt like it looked really good. And those faces are going to remain untouched pretty much for the rest of the process. In order to stay true to the color palette that I selected, I basically just took the color swatches I took from the beach. I literally taped them next to my paint mixing station, and I'm just using them as a reference to stay as true as possible to the colors I initially picked. And then again, I just keep putting paint on, and look, I don't know what's going on. Don't look at me, don't ask me. I did like the rendering of the character on the left, but the middle one and the right one were just looking like a mess, and then everything just felt really flat, and there was enough contrast, and it felt like I was losing the plot, and like it wasn't gonna work, and I really started like doubting myself, and I was like, am I even like capable of like delivering what they asked of me? Like, what's going on? And I just took a deep breath. And then what you're about to see is a technique I like to call slapping a bunch of paint on and seeing what works and what doesn't. Most of it doesn't work, but we got somewhere in the end, which is what's important. Trust the process. It felt appropriate to reassess at that moment because This is basically the point where I truly started to lose my mind and I went completely off script. This was one painting session in particular where I just completely forgot about the color palette that I wanted to follow initially, because I was just kind of getting nowhere and kept stalling and not making very much progress. And so I started introducing a lot of bright colors, like on the top over here. I made a bunch of dots of red and orange and yellow. Same thing on the skirt. And I also did a bunch of texturing on the dress on the left, which I do regret because it actually looked so much better before. I should have just left it as is. And at this point, it literally looks like a disco 70s girl group. Like, what is going on? Now that we're adding a bunch of random colors to this, why not add some blue?
Blue going on. Where's that inspiration coming from? I don't know. I like a little edge and a little pop in my hair, so I wanted to add something different, especially for the Teen Vogue party.
The blue was good though. I used it to kind of cover up all the parts of the middle figure that made me unhappy, and I'm going to do the same on the two other figures. I'm covering that top, that sparkly crazy top on the right, and then also the blonde girl, she's getting the same treatment of the watered down gouache layers to kind of tone everything down, because this isn't the Spice Girls, okay? We don't need crazy sparkly outfits. No offense to Spice Girls though, y'all are fab. Also there's 5 of them, so this would be more like Destiny's Child, I guess. At this point, I was kind of like, I didn't really like it. It felt so unfinished to me. I wasn't proud of it, but this was the night before I had to give it to my agents because I was leaving on the 23rd. I had to give it by the 22nd. So on the 21st, I was just like scrambling and I was almost losing hope. And so as I was painting over the blue using this brownish purple wash to kind of conceal my past mistakes, I got to thinking, and that's when the idea to paint a frame came to me. The first thing that I did for this painting was the color palette. It was what had kind of guided this process the whole way through, so I decided, why don't I paint a frame using those colors? You can barely see it because it's a very thin frame, but I illustrated here. There was 5 colors total in my color palette, and the teal was already the background, so I put the other colors as the frame. It was very meticulous work, but very, very satisfying. And so after that was finished, I was running out of time a little bit, so I had kind of made peace with the fact that the painting felt unfinished to me. I was focusing now more so on the background, cleaning it up and making sure all the figures and the edges were nice and crispy. But again, as I was painting the background, more ideas came to me, and then I had a freaking breakthrough.
Bro, it needs a circle.
It just needed a circle. There was this sort of like orangey highlight that I was placing, but it needed its light source.
Too big. Too small.
I couldn't find a perfect circle that was the exact dimensions that I wanted, so I ended up just perfecting the shape by hand using a pencil. I also tried to do a little ombre in that circle, but it was ugly, so I'm also going to cover that up later. After painting the frame, blocking in the background, and doing that circle, I feel like I could truly see the painting for what it is, and that's when I really entered flow state and I finished up on all the characters. The character on the left was the easiest one. I just lightened it up, to have a bit more contrast. I also darkened up the middle character with more darker washes because I think that's what looked best, and I also added back some highlights of the jeans, which looked really good, I think. And then I finally managed to paint a face that didn't look awful on the character on the right. I made this little ombre with sort of a circle shape, which kind of repeated the circle behind her. Also, if you focus on the pants, you can see there's an orange line that's kind of going in the middle as kind of a highlight. I decided to continue that line on the top, but in darker purple, and then adding more shadows to the orange line so that everything felt cohesive. And then I went to bed, woke up the next morning, signed my piece, added the date, and the painting was officially done. In the end, I'm really proud of this piece. Unfortunately, I didn't get my agent's reaction, but they really loved it. I think that it just like blended really well, the aspect of like the modeling. Also, just the integration of the colors in the framework, because that's kind of what framed this project. Is the first step that I did was pick my colors. And the fact that that's literally the frame for the painting, it just really tickles my pickle. So yeah, I really like this piece. I hope you enjoyed this. If you didn't though, please don't tell me because I'm very sensitive. Okay, that's it, bye.